The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome in Off the Bench. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliott Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here on a Friday. And we have a lot of Reds, a lot of Bengals, a lot of NFL, a lot of fun stuff to get into here today. Guys, good morning. How are we? Happy Friday.
I'm good. I'm looking forward to tonight. I think you are too, Elliot. We finally get to see the best local professional team play.
Finally. It's
TQL.
Finally time to walk into TQL and support the orange and blue.
The storied Griffins of FC Cincinnati.
That's right.
That's right. I can't wait to finally, let my guard down and welcome myself to such a wonderful place.
Yeah, that's right. Kinner, I tried to make it through that segment just then. But the first 5 comments are all related. They're all related to your hair.
I figured.
First one, bruh, that ain't his hair.
It is.
That's the first question.
It's not coming off. But, yes.
Mark says, does that haircut come with a new hat?
I can't. The only hat I have is this Detroit Lions hat in here, and I can't hide it. Listen, the first thing I told these guys when we logged on this morning was I don't want to do the show today. I don't want to deal with what 5 freaking comments into the show. It's just,
no, I think it was the first 5.
The first 5. It's going to be a rough day. Listen, I woke up super, super late. I had to go do a TV hit. Forgot about this. I did this on TV today.
No.
The first thing my wife texted me was, "Oh, you were late today, weren't you?" I'm like, "Why?" And then I realized this is why. But there's no product in it. It's just it's naturally curly. So there's that. Make fun of me. I don't care. Get it out of the way. I'm short. I'm fat. Have weird curly hair. Anything else? I think we got it.
I think you look beautiful.
He
Don't
looks
listen
like
to
the
haters.
TikTok kids.
He does. He does.
With a little curly on top.
He does look like
He looks like one of the TikTokers.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's just not worse. It's just not worse. But Casey, how are we? You got any weird hairstyles over there to take the attention away from me? What we got going on over there?
Casey's got a well-groomed mustache now.
Yeah, I got the mustache. I got my Gallo hat on. I'm all good. I'm all groomed up today.
Pico Day?
Pico de Gallo.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I like Pico de Gallo.
Well, you're wearing a hat for it.
It's a beer hat.
Close.
I didn't get to see Casey celebrate his family, Pete Rose's family, the other night. Did you thought the first pitch, Casey? How was Pete Rose night 2 nights ago?
Oh, well, you missed it. I missed like the whole first inning because of the long lines, having to wait outside the stadium trying to get in. And then when I sat down, the wife wanted food and drink, so I got up and got her nachos, which was on the opposite side of the stadium. So then I didn't get back to my seat until like the start of the bottom of the 3rd inning. So I missed like the entire first part of the game. And by that point, the Reds were down like 2 or 3-0 or something like that.
You knew it was over.
It was already over before I even really got to start watching them. So it was tough. Wow. It was a tough night.
I think a lot of Reds fans were not prepared. I mean, it's tough. I mean, outside of the bobblehead giveaways throughout the season, I don't think Reds fans are used to having to get to the ballpark early, not used to having to wait in line to get in the Great American Ballpark unless you're standing in line to get an Ellie bobblehead that you immediately put on eBay and then turn around and head back to your car. So, yeah, I'm sure that was a tough stretch for Reds fans the other night. And, I'm glad the organization decided to obviously honor the Hit King, the most competitive Red in the history of the franchise, by just not even trying that night. I mean, that was that was a hell of an effort 2 nights ago. I'm bummed I couldn't be here yesterday with you guys to talk about that hell of an effort. I heard, and I'm disappointed that Elliott, he put the nail in the coffin that the 2025 season is officially over. That's the rumor on the streets. Is that true?
It's true. It's done. Well, we tried to make it last as long as possible, and now it's dead. Now it's over. We tried, and it's over. So good for the Reds. They fought until May, what was it, 15th or 14th, whatever it was. and now it's just completely dead. You can try to believe in them, but when you play like 8 straight series against teams that aren't worth a damn and don't win any of them, it's going to be difficult for me to sit here and say that you have a chance going forward against good teams.
Well, maybe they're the kind of team that plays up to their competition. Have you ever thought about that, Elliot? Do you ever think that they're going to sweep? And they probably it would be they'll sweep the Guardians this weekend.
Yeah, I've thought about it. Unfortunately it goes through my mind very quickly. It just passes like a shooting star.
They're gonna sweep the Dodgers in mid-July to get to 2 games below 500.
Yeah,
we're gonna think we're back.
Yeah, there's gonna be a moment this season where hell they might even get back to over 500. They could go on like a little 5-game winning streak. You sweep the Dodgers, you take 2 or 3 from the Yankees, and it's like, all right, this team's really, really good. Now it's all coming together, and that's what you think, and that's what they want you to think. And then they're going to take it away from you the very next day when they get swept by the Pirates and the Marlins. That's what's going to happen. That's what we have to look forward to.
Yippee.
Woo!
Well, I tell you what else we have to look forward to, and that is headlines with Elliot coming up here next. We'll step away for a few moments. When we come back, we'll get to headlines with Elliot. We'll dive into more Reds talk coming up here shortly around the corner, some buy or sells. We'll have a little fun heading into the weekend. More off the bench when we come back. Quite the self-esteem day for old Kenner over here. We welcome you back off the bench. Justin Kenner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here.
We're doing a super chat to open this segment.
Jacob, why don't you read it?
You want me to read it?
Yeah.
$4.99, Justin Edgel. For Kenner to either go bald or buy a better rug. That is a heinous look. Thank you,
Jesus.
Justin Edgel.
Thank you for the $4.99 and the comments on my looks. Look, it's real. That's the problem. I will not go bald.
Mouse Cop saying.
No, I don't want to hear what Mouse Cop says.
Mouse Cop.
He's got to pay.
Mouse Cop says, imagine the Blue Jackets right now. The marketing department is probably in emergency mode.
And here we usually are, just a lack of energy on Fridays. You know, it's Friday. We're just ready to get through the show, get into the weekend. I'm glad to see everyone's laughing and smiling. It's the sacrifice.
Wait. We got one more.
Oh, there's more.
Spirit Cat says, somewhere in Hamilton, there's a poodle with a shaved back.
I hate today. Listen, I told the guys before the show that it was going to be horrible. It was not going to be fun.
Radio listeners, if there's ever a day to come over to the Chatterbox
Yeah.
YouTube, that day is today.
Yeah.
So you're going to want to see Kenner's cut.
And from now on, the only way we can read, you could say anything you want, make fun of my hair all you want, but we're not reading free ones anymore. You need to pay. If you want to insult me, you can.
I don't know.
insult
I'm gonna probably keep reading them because if they make me laugh, I'm gonna read them.
Don't. Only read them if they pay.
No,
yeah.
okay. If you
This
want
is
to
a
pay it out,
business.
yeah, all right, that's fine. You can pay for insults to Kenner.
Fair enough. All right, let's get to headlines. I did tell Casey during headlines, since I don't say much during headlines anyways, for my mental health and for the viewers' sake, we're gonna take me off camera. That way, it's just, you know, Elliot works hard on these headlines. I don't want to be a distraction, so it needs to be all about Elliot, all about the headlines. So, hit the sounder, Casey. It's now time for Elliot's headlines.
Score updates, breaking news, local and national headlines, whatever's going on in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered. Off the Bench brings you Elliot's headlines.
Should we turn that back up in the middle this time and just see what we're working with?
No. No,
The middles are always the best.
The middles are good.
When Casey forgets to rewind it, we get the best music we've ever had on the show.
All right, well then remind him after the MLB part.
Okay.
The Reds, as we mentioned, they win the game yesterday, 7-1. They win the series finale against one of the worst teams in baseball to lose the series.
At least they have fight.
So they won. My dad looked at me yesterday. Hey, the Reds won. I'm like, oh, did they? I mean, not really though, because they lost the series.
I think they won the run differential in the series.
They did. They did. That's always good.
That is good.
I as long as we can win the run differential in every series, we would have a chance. How many series losses have we won the run differential? At least 3.
At least.
It's been at least the opening series, the Rangers, and this one. I think we've had 3 series now. But we'll see. Who knows? The Reds had 12 hits. Good for them. This is how it always works. They have one game a week where they score 8, 7, 10, 12, 15, 20.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the week they do nothing.
It
But
was
they had-
Charlie Goldsmith on the radio yesterday was talking about that right there, and he said, why does it feel like every time the Reds have a good game and then it's followed up by a bad game? Because they all hit 160. And when
Yeah.
you get 2 hits, you're statistically not going to get any the next game.
Yeah.
Like, that's a good point.
The Reds had 12 hits, including home runs by Will Benson, Matt McClain, Ellie De La Cruz. Tonight, it's Brady Singer versus Tanner Bybee. Brady coming in with a 4.97 ERA. That's much worse than I thought.
Yeah.
He's given up 11
I think
earned
he kind of
runs.
skates by because we score 15 a game
True.
when he's on the mound.
True. He's given up 11 earned runs in his last 2 games. Bybee's coming in with a 3.8 ERA. But as I say every time I say the opponent's ERA, does not matter. Does not matter. Nick Martinez tossed 7 innings of 2-hit shutout baseball yesterday also. I forgot to mention that. His ERA drops to 3.6.
Shout out to our very own Nick Kirby for ruining that perfect game. No hitter.
Nick Kirby texted us, I would say 1 second before Martinez gave up a hit in whatever inning that was, and said, all right, guys, we're going to start doing the no-hitter bit or the perfect game bit, and then boom, it's gone. So that was Nick Kirby, not
That's
us.
right.
The Dodgers, they put up 19 runs on the Athletics. They win by 17. Shohei, he hit 2 home runs in that game. They hit 5 total. The Rangers, they shut out the Astros 1-0. The Rays took care of the Blue Jays 8-3. The Twins shut out the Orioles 4-0. They have won 11 games in a row, including 2 sweeps of the Orioles during that stretch.
Would you look at that?
Tough. Braves beat the Nationals 5-2. That was it for baseball yesterday. Thursdays are shorter days. Casey, let's turn up the music a little bit.
Turning it up.
NBA.
That's
Look at
the good stuff.
That is the good stuff.
I missed you say the Astros-Rangers score, so let me get this in
'Kay.
right here. It's so loud. I love it. That thing shreds, man.
Yeah, it does.
That thing absolutely shreds. Since pitches were first tracked in 1988, last night's Astros-Rangers game is the only MLB game in history where both starters pitched 8+ innings, allowed no more than 1 run, had 7+ strikeouts, and threw less than 100 pitches.
That's pretty neat.
Doesn't seem like too many wild stats there to get the first game of all time.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. Heading over to the National Basketball Association, the Nuggets, they forced Game 7 with their 119-107 victory over the Thunder.
Rigged.
Jokic had 29 points and 14 rebounds. Game 7.
Yeah, had to get one, right?
Who
Shout
you-
out Adam Silver.
Who you got in Game 7?
I don't think OKC's going to lose at home. Also, I don't think Denver deserved to force a Game 7.
Yeah.
They played well last night, and they certainly got that win, but they were wearing their altitude jerseys.
Yeah.
And that's disgusting in an elimination game. I love my Pacers, but they wear their spray paint City Connects for their home games in the playoffs, and I think it's terrible. You got to wear your standard jerseys or
Yep.
close to them in the playoffs. I hate it.
The Stars, well, heading over to the Hockey League. The Stars, they got shut out last night, our Dallas Stars. 4-0 they lose, but they still lead that series 3-2. The Capitals, they were eliminated in their 5th game last night. The Hurricanes win 3-1. So how about that? Our Capitals, my Capitals, they go down. Heading over to the NFL, the Football League. ESPN's Seth Wickersham detailed in his upcoming book, The American Kings, a biography of the quarterback, that Caleb Williams, and his family thought about eschewing, is that the right word? The NFL draft, and met with lawyers to figure out how to do that. One potential plan was for Williams to reportedly skip the draft, the 2024 draft together, and sign with a team in the UFL for a year to avoid being chosen by Chicago. His father said, quote, "It's the place where quarterbacks go to die."
Shout out to Caleb Williams and his dad for being right.
Yeah.
Because if you continue to read the article, it says that Shane Waldron, Matt Eberflus did not provide a system that he thought he was going to be able to succeed in. He didn't think he was going to be able to get any kind of help to develop or anything along those lines. And turns out he was right. Eberflus and Shane Waldron fired in the middle of the season. I think that's certainly one of the most concerning things to read out of this is not only did a prospect and his dad recognize how inept the coaching staff was, but the GM and the ownership didn't.
Yeah.
And they kept him around for half a year. I think it is somewhat of a concern that Caleb's dad is talking to the media about this stuff when he's currently on the Bears.
Yeah.
Maybe don't do that.
I wouldn't.
But I think the disagreement there and, not wanting your son, who's, one of the biggest names coming out of college in the last few years, a consensus #1 overall pick for 2 straight college seasons, to not be tied into a 5-year contract with a terrible franchise. I don't think it's the craziest thing to explore. I think it's crazy that they're talking about it now, and I think it's kind of crazy that they were right.
Yeah. Heading over to the PGA Championship, Vegas leads it at 6 under par. He's +1 today. Gerard and Cam Davis, they're in second, as well as Tyrrell Hatton, who's 2 under for the day. I believe Max Homa, I don't know if you saw this. I know Jacob saw it, but I don't know if you guys saw it. It was a par 4, I think 357 yards, flies the trees, and goes within about a foot of the hole. So he is good.
I misread the PGA tweet when they tweeted it, and it said Max Homa near ace on a par 4. And I'm watching the video. I'm like, no, there's no way he gets a hole-in-one here. And then he lands short, and I was like, wait, what? And then I reread it and said near. Shoot.
He's 6 under through 10 holes. He's now at 4 under par, which is tied for 4th. Tied for 4th as well, Adam Scott, Colin Morikawa, Aaron Rai, Pavan, Thor Bjornsson. I think that's how I say that. Fox, Smalley, Jaeger. And now Cam Davis just dropped while I was reading this. I think he did. He's at 4 under par as well. So those are your headlines.
And there you go, off the bench. By the way, while you were doing that, I had to go ask people around the building. I'm like, hat, anybody have a hat?
There we go.
No.
There we go.
It was either that one or I'm not cool enough to do like the little flat belt hat thing. Like, look, it just doesn't work.
I think we go with that one.
I like that one too.
Would not. Well,
backwards.
Maybe I'm a backwards hat guy. No,
you can go back.
No.
You can go backwards.
What about to the side?
That's really the one.
This hat is really big though. Yeah. So we'll just go back to.
Looks like it's adjustable.
There we go. Yeah.
What hat is that? What logo is that?
This is an Ohio State hat.
Oh.
It says Ohio State Buckeyes right there. You should know that. I thought don't you have this hat? You're a big Buckeye fan.
No, I don't. I think that's the alternate logo. I'm not familiarized with the alternate logos yet.
By the way, did you see that? I mean, look, I'm very pissed about Ohio State having to play all these noon kickoffs as well. But, this is the stuff that, as much as I'm a fan or not a fan of Ohio State having to play at noon, the fact that now there's like state legislation trying to get involved to prevent Ohio State from having noon kickoffs, that's where I kind of draw the line a little bit. Like, look, I didn't like the big little brawl between Ohio State and Michigan last year, but when you had politicians trying to get involved to, arrest anybody that stepped foot on the field, that rushed the field or whatever, I thought that was a little much. It just makes Ohio State look soft. I think state legislation getting involved to help eliminate Ohio State having to play at noon, I think that makes them look soft. Jake, where are you at with that? I hate noon kickoffs. I'm not a fan of them having to play at noon. They need to be playing these big teams like Texas under the lights. But I think it makes Ohio State, it puts them in a position to get made fun of, which I'm not a fan of.
Yeah, I like it if it works. I mean, if it makes them look stupid, I don't really care if they get games at night. So, yeah, I'll take it. And obviously that legislation is not going to get passed to make it illegal to schedule Ohio State games at noon. But if it puts enough pressure
that's such a
on Fox or
when you say it out loud, it makes it sound even more of a deal.
It's just public pressure on a change that you want made to a system that you don't have a lot of control over. So I think the more pressure you put on them, the higher likelihood that we get at least 1 or 2 night games in the season. So obviously we've already lost Texas to the noon kick. Michigan's always a noon kick. Hopefully this kind of stuff can, and as long as we keep talking about it, can make sure Penn State's a night game. And there's a lot of good games on Ohio State's schedule every year. Maybe we can at least split them between prime time and big noon kickoff. I don't know what the exact answer is. I know there's a lot of money wrapped up in the TV deals and things along those lines. Big Ten's locked in for a long time with that big noon kickoff deal, but it stinks. I mean, marquee games should be played under the lights. They always have been and they always should be.
Yeah, and look, so again, On3 reported this a couple days ago. Look, an Ohio representative has presented a bill to prevent Ohio State games from being scheduled at noon. The bill would prevent games from beginning before 3:30 when the state university is involved, except for Michigan. And look, I hate it. And to be fair, I did see that there are people coming out defending Fox. They are getting so much heat for this that they technically have not announced that it is a big noon kickoff. The game has been picked up by Fox, but there's a lot of pressure on Fox of whether they're actually going to place that game at noon or not. So we'll see how that all ends up panning out when it's all said and done. But you're right, Jake. I guess if the pressure works, then fine. But just sometimes, it just puts Ohio State in position to get. But then again, they're defending national champions.
That's right. We're national champs.
So I will compare it to this though. I do believe when Ohio State, it's fans are pissed about it. But Ohio State kind of loses out on the right to kind of complain about it themselves. Just like I'm going to compare it to the Trey Hendrickson situation. Trey Hendrickson, you agreed, you signed a contract, you agreed to get paid what you got paid. Hell, you even reworked the contract 2 years ago and then have complained since that the pen touched the paper. That's kind of my problem with Ohio State is you kind of knew what you were setting yourself up for. Did you think that Fox was going to consistently pick Rutgers or Northwestern to put on their big noon kickoff every week? No, you knew you were the big draw. You knew that you were going to be utilized in this position. So it's one thing for fans to complain. My only pushback with Ohio State is you're not allowed to complain because you agreed to this. You put yourself in this position. Technically, how much power do they technically have? I can understand that argument. But at the same time, I do think there should be a limit. I think the amount of times you could be able to use a team out of the Big Ten is twice. But again, that's also on the Big Ten for not caring as well. But when Ohio State has to play all these games at noon and all this stuff just so Rutgers could get the same amount of money as them, I think that's ridiculous at the end of the day.
I agree, and I think that's something that a lot of people are starting to push back on as well. And if you want to keep putting Ohio State at big noon kickoff because there's not – and Michigan as well. Michigan's in that same boat as Ohio State over these last few years with the big noon kickoff. Those two teams are distantly removed from the rest of the Big Ten. Obviously, Oregon, USC, UCLA, Washington were not in the Big Ten for the first 2 years of the big noon kickoff, so those stats will probably be skewed, and some of those teams will join those big market programs in the next few years. But Ohio State and Michigan have been on big noon kickoff for their marquee games so much more than the rest of the conference. And all those teams that you just named that have no draw to be in that primetime slot, the Rutgers, even the Nebraskas before Raiola got there, a lot of these teams, Purdue, they're getting the same amount of money. And Ohio State fans are saying, fine, if you want to give them the night games, the primetime games, and give us the noon games, we'll suck it up. But we want a bigger cut of the check. We shouldn't be splitting it equally. And I completely agree with that. There's no reason that Ohio State should have to play their marquee games at noon in the bright afternoon while Purdue and Rutgers are playing at 7:30 under the lights. That's absolutely ridiculous. And if you want to do that, then reward Ohio State financially.
All right, off the bench, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliott Ruring, Jacob Tissett with you here. The Cincinnati Reds, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but they have some problems. They have a couple. Not as big as this, though. They don't have all their problems. None of their problems are worse than what I have going on over here. But the bottom line is the Cincinnati Reds, they do have a lot of problems. Nick Kirby and Trace Fowler on Chatterbox Reds in the postgame the other night. Kirby had this to say, which we'll get to coming up. He said that the Cincinnati Reds, their biggest problem is – we'll have that for you coming up here on the other side, and we'll tell you if we agree or disagree. We'll get to that when we come back. More off the bench next. Well, the Reds beat up on the White Sox in Game 3 to avoid getting swept yesterday, and my goodness, with all the smiles and the way they were running around the ballpark, you would have thought they just won the World Series. But I am glad they avoided getting swept. It's bad enough you lose to the White Sox, you lose a series against the White Sox, but getting swept by the White Sox really would have just been absolutely demoralizing as far as that's concerned. Look, the Reds have a lot of problems, but what is their biggest problem? Nick Kirby and Trace Fowler discussed on Chatterbox Reds the other night. Take a look.
I don't think it's a Nick Martinez thing or replacing him with someone else. I think it's a much larger problem than that. If you didn't have Nick Martinez right now, your rotation would look really bad. Because remember, Chase Petty's technically in this rotation right now. Who's the guy starting behind him if they're not going to call up Chase Burns? And let's not act like calling up Chase Burns is a surefire thing either. So you need both. You needed both. The problem is that when the Reds have something go wrong, they don't have the depth to overcome it. And that's what the Brewers have done. And that's why the Brewers have been successful and the Reds haven't, is they just don't have enough depth. And that's not something you can fix overnight. You're never going to fix in this city, whether you want to hear this or not, by spending. It's just not going to happen. You have to continue to grind away and draft well and develop and make smart strategic trades. And they've done a lot of things good, but they haven't done enough.
Depth, the number one, when you look at the number one issue that the Cincinnati Reds have, Kirby talked about the depth, not just with pitching, but obviously just positional players throughout, not just on the main roster, but throughout the system, of course. Number one problem with the Reds, depth, obviously. Elliot, where are we at with this?
My term that I used throughout the past month or so of watching this team and on this show is adversity. When they have to deal with any sort of adversity, they don't have the tools to respond to it. Whether that be injury, whether that be a guy that's in a year-long slump like Spencer Steer and Matt McClain, whatever the adversity is, losing several games in a row, not being able to finish those rubber matches, those game threes when you have a shot to take a series. They don't have that answer. And I don't know what the answer is, but whatever it is, the Reds don't have it. And that's been an issue for a long time now. I don't fully blame Nick Kroll. I don't blame the manager. I don't fully blame the players. I don't fully blame anybody. But Kirby said it in that clip. They haven't done enough. And my thing is, if you're going to continue to do the same thing over and over again with zero success, you're asking for failure. And that's what the Reds are doing. They're asking for failure. We can sit here and try to believe in the core, and it's ironic. Jacob and I were talking about it yesterday. The show yesterday was about the young core that we have and not doing enough. Ironically, they all hit home runs yesterday.
Right.
They all had good games yesterday. But it's a consistency problem. Casey on the show has echoed this as his probably main point this year, and he's correct. They're not consistent. They can't handle adversity. They're not deep. They're not good enough. They're not. And since that 2023 run, it's been the same story. And there's no answer. There's no response from the front office. And Kirby kind of said it there in that clip that, you can't reasonably expect all your problems to be fixed with $500 million and spending on every single position, because the Reds don't have that. We can sit here and complain about it, which I do, but it's not a realistic fix because the Reds will never have a $500 million payroll. It'll never happen in a trillion, billion, gazillion years. Can't happen. So what do you have, right? You have your young core and you have your ability to draft and to develop. There was a large stretch of time where the Reds could not draft and they could not develop. A large stretch. A little too large of a stretch, in my opinion. They've been better at it recently. They've also had, draft picks where it's almost hard for those guys not to work out, right. And Rhett Lauder and Chase Burns. When you're drafting at the top every time, it's difficult to miss on that. But the Reds don't have the depth. They don't have the resiliency. They don't have it. They don't. Whatever it is that you need to be a successful organization, the Reds are missing it. And we can talk about their 7-1 win yesterday over one of the worst teams in baseball to lose the series, and talk about, all right, now we have some momentum. But nothing's going to change. Nothing has changed since the middle of 2023. So you can't expect it right now. All you can expect and all you can hope for is that the guys that you have take strides. The issue with that is, and we mentioned it yesterday, we're going to mention it probably for as long as we do this show, it's a time game. You're playing a time game because you're not going to be able to pay Elly De La Cruz.
Correct.
You're not going to be able to pay all these guys, which means you're under a clock. The rebuild was supposed to be ended by now. It was supposed to be over. This was supposed to be competitive. You have Terry Francona. Terry Francona is not going to get up off his couch from watching Peaky Blinders reruns. He wasn't going to do that unless this team had a competitive chance to make some noise. He's not coming up here to watch this team win 65 games. This was supposed to be a year that they were going to compete. And it's just not. It's not a competitive bunch. It's not a competitive roster. It took them nearly 2 months to figure out Will Benson was a better option than Jacob Hurtubise. It took them nearly 2 months to figure out that Blake Dunn wasn't the answer. Like, these are things that have to be, they have to know, right? This isn't like Stuart Fairchild where one of them hits, 300 against lefties. They're not good. Those players aren't good. And that was the answer the Reds had for us for 40 games. So we'll see what they do going forward. But yeah, Kirby's right. They don't have the depth. I also don't think they can handle adversity.
I think a lot of that comes from, what we talked about with the signings they did make this year, and we've seen those signings play to, basically with no exception, the ceiling we could have hoped for them.
Yeah.
Right? Gavin Lux, Jose Trevino, Austin Hayes when he was healthy. Struggled a little bit since coming back from that injury, but the numbers overall for the time he's been on the field looks great this year. Brady Singer, maybe that ERA creeping up, but still has given us a chance to win every game that he's been on the mound or damn near. So those additions have been great, but we know that we have to be driven by the guys we have here. We know we have to be driven by that young core. We know that if we have any chance of ever having a star in Cincinnati, it has to be someone that we draft or sign as a prospect, because we're never going to have a chance to spend money on those guys in free agency. It's just not in our price bracket. So while Kirby says we can't spend money, to fix that, if you can't spend money on stars, why don't we spend money on the rest of the roster? I don't think because you can't spend money on a superstar, you should be sitting $50 million below the league median in roster value or payroll. That doesn't seem like a trade-off to me. We've seen the players we brought in on bargain deals make big impacts for this team. So just because you can't go out and get the Juan Sotos, I don't love that, we kind of wave the right, and I do it too. I think all Reds fans do. We kind of wave the white flag and say, well, we can't get those big names. We'll just give it a go with what we got.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing there's no middle ground there.
And I think that's a fair point as my throat's going out here. But the Reds there's a difference between trying your best and believing in the young core.
Correct.
There's a difference there. You can believe in your young core while also have answers for when they inevitably struggle. The Reds don't have those answers. Jacob's right. They 100%. Out of the additions they brought in this offseason, they're hitting at what, a 90% clip?
Yeah.
Like, they did good. Like, Nick Krall did good in that regard. But you're still putting all your eggs in the basket of this young core. And maybe you have to. Maybe that's just you just sit here and have to. But I also think you can give this roster more than what you did.
Correct.
And that's the fundamental difference between me and some other and other people and Jacob and other people on Twitter or whatever.
I'm not asking for 110 wins in a World Series. I'm asking to play competitive baseball for the entirety of the season. And in order to do that, you have to have pieces on your roster that if you lose someone for a game or if they go on a cold stretch, you can plug someone in that can play baseball. We're at a point right now where if we lose some of these guys, what does this roster look like in terms of the lineup? We're already struggling to field a lineup that we're confident in when everyone's healthy. So I have a hard time blaming anyone but the front office.
And that's why. So when I saw that Chatterbox had put that clip out and said that the Reds' number one problem is depth, I don't think their number one problem is depth. I think their number one problem, and it is a problem. I think their problem right now, and you just alluded to it. I mean, like right now, this team, obviously Noelvi Marte is out. They've had, Austin Hayes has had stints on the IL. Obviously, Stevenson came into the season late. But the problem is I think the Reds' number one problem is the guys that we expect to be good just haven't been good. And it goes back to Elliot's point about the consistency. Like, we could sit here and talk about what's behind Matt McClain. We could talk about what's behind Elly De La Cruz. We could talk about what's behind Spencer Steer. And we could talk about what's behind Tyler Stevenson and all this. But the bottom line is we can't get to talking about what's behind those guys if the guys that are ahead of those, like Matt McClain, they're just not playing good baseball. Matt McClain is underachieved this season mightily. And maybe he's banged up still because he got off to a hot start, 3 home runs in the first 5 games of the season or whatever it was. And then, has hit only 2 since then. And we're 40-plus games into the season. Matt McClain has not played the way he's supposed to. Spencer Steer's been banged up, yes. But, I mean, if he's healthy enough to be out there, we see, if you're healthy enough to go a couple games in a row looking good and then you're bad again, is it because of the injury or just because you're just inconsistent? That's the problem I have. Tyler Stevenson's only played in a limited amount of games since being back and had a couple nice solid games early when he got back, but he's hitting 180 since returning. So, like, I'm not, the depth is a problem, yes, but the depth should be something we talk about if Tyler Stevenson's been out this whole time, if Matt McClain's been out and these guys have been out. These guys are in the lineup. Elly had that tough stretch in early April. He's been on a tear as of late, right? And that's great. But there's a lot of guys, Spencer Steer, Matt McClain, Tyler Stevenson. I mean, you look up and down this lineup, the core, the guys that we thought we were going to be relying on, and then you go and you add your pieces in the offseason. Those were supposed to be complementary pieces. Those weren't supposed to be the pieces that were carrying this roster, and Gavin Lux was pretty much carrying this roster. Austin Hayes carrying this roster. That was the problem to me. The fact that the offseason acquisitions, which were underwhelming acquisitions, the fact that they were carrying this team, that to me is the problem. They weren't supposed to come carry the team. They were supposed to come do what they're doing now on top of Elly playing lights out, Matt McClain playing lights out, Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strand. The list goes on and on. So, yes, depth issue is a major concern. But at a certain point, this isn't about Terry Francona. It wasn't about David Bell. We could talk about the front office, but these are good baseball players that just aren't playing good, and I think that's the number one problem. That's who I'm annoyed as hell with Matt McClain. I'm annoyed as hell with Spencer Steer. I'm annoyed as hell with Tyler Stevenson. I'm looking at all those core players right now and saying, it's kind of on you guys at a certain point. It's kind of up to you. You got to do your part. It can't just be, blaming the front office every time or the lack of depth. At a certain point, if they're all doing their job and then they're failing, it's one thing. But they're not doing their job right now. And to me, I think that's the biggest problem with this Reds team, at least as we sit here 40-plus games, a month and a half into the season.
Yeah, and I think that's completely fair because even sitting here as two guys that have said the Reds didn't do enough this last offseason, if they checked every box we wanted them to check this offseason, feasible boxes, I'm not saying, we want them to go get Soto and trade for Shohei. I'm saying realistic things that they could do. If they checked every single box and Matt McClain was hitting 160 and Elly was hitting 230 like he was for the first, month of this season and Spencer Steer's hitting 200, this team's probably right where they are right now. Like, it's always going to have to be these guys. And I think that's why it is frustrating. We don't want to blame them because we know it's the only chance we have. So to throw in the towel on these guys, which I know it's not, and criticism goes both ways, and they can get out of a slump and you believe in them again, but it just doesn't always feel like that. So it's hard to talk about the guys that have to be good in order for your team to be good because you don't want to be negative around Matt McClain and Elly De La Cruz because we don't have another option. If these guys aren't good, if they're closer to this than what we saw in 2023, what are these next 3-4 years going to be?
Yeah.
Because then you're not talking about extensions. You're talking about waiting for the next core. Like, I don't like to live in a world where there's a possibility that these guys aren't great, so it's tough to talk about when they go on these rough stretches because the Reds don't have another chance to be competitive.
I can't be looking at the future any longer. I'm about up to here with, the next group of guys, this group of guys.
Right.
You just got to wait. He's only 23. You just got to wait a little bit. You got to wait. I've been waiting my entire life, I'm 26 years old. I've experienced nothing. So
most of this young core has never seen the Reds advance in the playoffs.
So it's I take it with a grain of salt when somebody tells me how good our prospects are and how hard a ball is being hit off the bat down in AAA. Like, that's all fine and dandy. Like, we're all cheering for the same thing here, but eventually you would like to see that success happen at the major league level with the hometown team. Eventually, you'd like that to be the case. You'd like that to be the story. instead of what's going on down in AA and AAA and single A.
Yeah, and I think that's what happens with, the Reds do a very good job at just constantly preaching the future, the future, the future. And my biggest complaint for years has always been, when is the future now? Right? Like, when is the future now? Like, we're constantly saying we can't, and this is a separate argument, and I'm not saying they should trade pieces. I'm just saying, I remember last year when we were doing this show together, we were talking about, what prospects should or should they not move on from? And, this guy's going to be this talented. This guy's going to be really good. He's the future at this position. I said, maybe. But if that guy has more value as far as what he could bring to you versus what he could be in the future, then I think you got to at some point strike while the iron's hot in those positions. But it's always about can't do this, can't do that because the future, the future, the future. Well, the guys that are here now, 3-4 years ago, couldn't do anything with them because the future, the future, the future, and look what's happening now. And I will say you're right. If we wait for the next wave of guys to come through, watch, we're going to get the best hitters in the world coming through next time, and we'll have the worst pitching in all of Major League Baseball. Like, it's like you got to strike while the iron's hot. There's capable hitters in this lineup that just aren't doing their job, and you have one of the best rotations when healthy, a bullpen that's very, very capable of complementing that, as we've seen. They just, by the time you get the pieces you're looking for that fit this team now, then that becomes the strength later, and then the strength of this team becomes the weakness later, and it's just a dog chasing its tail at a certain point, and that's what I feel like the Reds do. They're just constantly chasing their tail, and they never get it right, it seems.
I feel like, and I heard you use that word. I hear Cincy B in the chat use that word, and I hear that word a lot. We're waiting. The Reds aren't waiting anymore. They're stuck, and there's a difference between waiting and being stuck. We're not waiting on anything anymore. The Reds are in the same spot that they were 10 years ago. They're in the same spot that they were 5 years ago, and 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, and last year. They're not moving forward. We're not waiting. We're just stuck. The door is closed. There's no sunlight coming in, and we're just remaining in the same place until somebody can unlock that door. Nobody's figured that out yet. And until someone does, whether that be, somebody else that can run our baseball ops, get Nick Kroll out, whether it's somebody that can be a GM and be successful, get Brad Meter out, whether it be the ownership, whether it be the players in the field, and we all thought it was going to be Ellie, but it takes more than one person, one really, really good baseball player, to take you out of this drought.
Right.
Shohei Ohtani couldn't save the Los Angeles Angels. Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani couldn't save the Los Angeles Angels. I hope Ellie De La Cruz is as good as Shohei and Mike Trout, but those are two of the greatest baseball players to ever walk the planet. And they couldn't save that organization because it takes more than just two. It takes more than Hunter Green and Ellie. It takes more than 3. It takes more than 4. It takes an entire roster. And the Reds aren't close to having that. So until they get that, we're stuck. We're not waiting anymore. We're stuck.
All right, off the bench, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rurry, and Jacob Tissett will step away for a few. A little buy or sell coming up next. All right, and we are back. Buy or sell? A little baseball edition of buy or sell, at least for this part of the show. So we'll get started. Elliot, simple one right here. Buy or sell? The season, the 2025 season is over. Buy or sell when it comes to your Cincinnati Reds?
Yeah, I said yesterday I'm not changing my stance because they won the finale after losing the series to the White Sox. that certainly doesn't change my mind. The season's over. You can say whatever you want. You can still experience good moments this year. You can still have Hunter Green potentially win a Cy Young this year. You can have Ellie De La Cruz play his tail off and be an MVP caliber player this year. You can have a lot of good things that happen in a season that's already over, but this season's done. There is 0.0% chance that the Reds make the postseason, or better yet, go on some sort of run that would get them to a pennant. So I'm out. I'm out on the Reds for this year. Hopefully they're able to do something where they don't scare off our manager. Hopefully they're able to win 75 games at least. But as for making the playoffs, there's no way you can watch this team and say, you know what is going to happen? The Reds are going to go on some sort of run and beat good teams and make the playoffs. There's logically, there's no way you think that. So I'm out.
Yeah, it's a shame we're right back where we were last year, and we're forced to root for individual awards and some great performances along the way. Yeah, I'm buying it as well. I think the playoff hopes or competing for the division or wild card or even really getting that close in July or August is pretty much out the window. I don't expect this team to make a real big push. Maybe you can sneak a 12-game win streak in there and change some things. I don't know. But, yeah, I'm buying it for now. If you got to scratch and claw to not get swept by the White Sox, it's not a very good place to be.
This one, I'm not just taking this stance just because you two took the other side. Like, I'm not very confident that the Reds are making the playoffs. I'm not very confident in this team at all. But for me right now, I look at where the Reds are in respect to everybody else. And it's tough because you're coming off a series against the stupid White Sox where you should have at the very least taken 2 of 3. How you lose on Pete Rose night, and I'm not overblowing, it's Pete Rose night, how do you lose? But if you can't get motivated to show up to the damn ballpark with 40,000 people playing and honoring who you're the face of your franchise all time and Pete Rose, and you come out as flat as they did, what else can motivate you to play? Now, that sounds very negative because I'm about to say, no, I do not. I'm not going to buy that the 2025 season is officially over just because as long as they have the pitching that they're getting, and I'm keeping an eye, too. Like, you look at the Chicago Cubs. They were lights out in that first month of the season when they were playing the toughest schedule in baseball. I think it was the toughest or second toughest schedule in baseball. The Cubs are playing the easiest schedule in baseball or second easiest schedule in baseball this month. They're 4-6 in their last 10 games right now. Like, there's some vulnerability there as far as who's sitting at the top of the Central. I think we've said multiple times the only chance the Reds have of making the playoffs is to win the Central. I know that sounds absolutely crazy right now, but I'm just keeping an eye on the Cubs. I'm keeping an eye on what's kind of going on with the teams ahead of them. It is very unlikely. The probability is very, very low that they make the playoffs. But with this pitching, I can't necessarily put the nail in the coffin and say that they are not going to figure it out. Maybe it's my blind faith in Terry Francona, and I know managers don't have as big of an impact on baseball nowadays as what they used to. I'm not willing to put the nail in the coffin yet on the 2025 season, but they don't deserve anyone's faith right now. They don't deserve anyone's fandom right now. But for the time being, I refuse to say that the season is over. But, man, we're getting very, very close. And I feel like I'm doing the thing I did last year. Well, let's see what this series does. And then they'll win 2 or 3, and then they'll drop 2 or 3 the following series. And then they'll take 2 or 3 from the Cubs and get you to scoop back in, and then they'll play a bad team and get swept. Or they'll get swept by the Brewers after maybe sweeping the Cubs here in a few weeks. Who knows? For right now, I am not putting the nail in the coffin. I'm not saying that they're making the playoffs, but I am not buying that the season is over, at least for where we sit here right now. So there's that.
No disrespect to your opinion. Who do they beat? What stretch? We went through the easiest stretch of our season, and we won 1 series against the team that's historically the worst of all time. That was our only win. You lose to the Marlins, you lose to the Nationals, and more embarrassingly, you lose to the White Sox at home. What's the thought that the pitching is going to be good? Because the pitching's been good. Pitching's been as good as humanly possible. So if that continues, you're expecting the offense to change, and I don't see it.
It's not that I'm expecting the offense to change. I just think that there's guys in this lineup that we know are better than what they've performed up to this point. It's not like this lineup is full of bad hitters. You just have guys who aren't hitting, and I think that's a problem. Now, if it is because of injuries, if Matt McClain truly is playing hurt, I mean, we saw it with Noel Marte, who was actually performing very well, but we find out that all of a sudden out of nowhere, he's on the IL, and we find out that he had played 10, 12, whatever many games it was, injured. And it was like, what the hell? But for right now, it's not as if there's just a bunch of no-name players in this lineup because all the talented players are out hurt. There's capable hitters in this lineup, and as long as that pitching is there, and these guys do at some point catch fire. That's why. I'm not telling you, LA, that they're making the playoffs. I'm not telling you they're actually going to come back and win this division. I just think they are these guys away, a couple guys in this lineup away of figuring it out, guys that we know are capable of it. And they're close, but I know no one wants to hear that. I know I'm not going to win arguments when it comes to this. It's just a vibe thing for me. And if you want me to go out on a limb and give you a hot take, how about this for a Friday? When we come back on Monday, we're going to talk about how the Cincinnati Reds just swept the Cleveland Guardians at Great American Ballpark, and it starts tonight. They're getting a win tonight, and they're going to take that win over the White Sox and build on that momentum, baby. They're going to
Let me ask you this:
win all 3 games against the Guardians this weekend.
Let me flip it for you. Let's say the Reds get swept at home by the Guardians. Then when is it over then?
Yes.
How many more?
Terry Francona has swept a lot of Ohio Cups.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of them.
They don't win games at home. They play horrible baseball at home. So I
know. We saw it. Great American bought 40,000 people the other night. It couldn't get them. That juice just couldn't get them going. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because all of us Reds fans just tell them how bad they suck, and maybe they just prefer being on the road. I don't know, but
I will say I think Kinner's point's right. If I believed that they had good hitters in the lineup, that's where I think I disagree with what you're saying. Like, if they did have a good lineup where I thought all these guys were slumping, I would tend to not have the season be over. But when Santiago Espinal is batting second every night, your bat you're believing in to carry the lineup and hit 300 and be your best power bat's a 1-year, $5 million outfielder. Spencer Steer has been hitting around the Mendoza line for the last 162 games of his career. Stevenson's been terrible since he got back. Maybe that falls in that bucket of guys you believe that it'll be better. And Connor Joe has been abysmal against right-handed pitching his entire career, and I certainly don't believe in any other corner outfielder we have to be consistently good. So I feel like the roster is bad, and that's why I'm more in the season is over camp. If they can prove me wrong on that, then I would certainly start to inch closer to your side.
All right, 12 or more runs this series against the Guardians. 12 or more runs total this series against the Guards.
Oh, more.
Yeah, it's more.
One game.
I was going to say, that happens every series.
We'll lose. We will win. We'll win the run differential against the Guardians. We will lose the series.
I'm going to look that up right now. Have they scored more than 12 in every series?
No, we got 0-1 in 2 games of the Rangers series.
No, but that was more 12 because they put 12 runs up.
They did put 12 runs up in the first game.
14. The Reds lost to the series against the Astros. They scored 13 in a game.
Right.
The Reds lost the series to the Braves. The Braves might be the answer. 4-8. Yeah, the Braves is the answer. They scored 9 runs in a 4-game series with the Braves. So there's your answer.
All right. Buy or sell, continuing on here. Buy or sell, the Cincinnati Reds will reach 500 or better at some point this season. Buy or sell. And it sounds like I know where this.
Oh, no, I'll buy it. I'll buy
it as well.
Yeah, it's going to happen. Like,
they're only 3 games below.
When I say the season is over, I'm not talking about mathematically. I'm talking about that I don't believe that they're going to be capable of winning games when it matters. That's what I'm talking about. I just said this whole stretch this year, this stretch they just went on, they had to walk away with a winning record. They had to, because the teams they were playing weren't very good. The same way I said last season, right before the All-Star break, they had to come away with a winning record against the Marlins, Rockies, and Nationals after. They did not do that. When they have to win games, they don't win games. So that's why I say the season's over. But, yeah, they're going to win. They're going to sweep somebody. They're going to sweep a couple. They might win 7 in a row at one point, and you're going to have a little bit of belief and faith. But at the end of the year, when it's all said and done, this is not a playoff team. This is not a team that can compete for a championship.
If the Reds scratch and claw to get 1 game back of the Cubs, I don't have faith that they can win 2. And if they get a 1-game lead, I'm pretty confident that they'll blow it. So that's why I agree with Elliot. I certainly think there's stretches in this season where the Reds are going to be able to, give us some fun stretches of baseball, and hopefully, you can string a couple of those together and prove us wrong, and the season isn't over. But I think they'll get above 500. I don't think they'll get much more. I think they'll stick around, high 70s, low 80s. In terms of the win total this year, comfortably outside of the playoffs, and maybe give you something you can believe in going into next year. I don't know what that answer is, but I think a very similar question to this is, do you think they'll hold a wild card spot again? At any point?
No, I do not. Okay. Nope.
Let me flip that. You asked a question a little bit ago, and I meant to flip it, and I moved on too soon. You asked, what do I need to see before I'll buy that they're not a good team at all? What do you have to see for you to buy into them then? Because there's still a lot of season left, and I know that's annoying to hear, but what do you have to see for you to say, okay, there is something there?
It's very simple. It's literally the easiest task one can accomplish. All you have to give me is series wins. I don't care how you do it. I don't care how ugly it is. I don't care if you're winning 1-0 and your series wins. You have to be able to win series. You have to be able to win rubber matches. Kinner, they don't win game 3s. If you lose game 1, they've lost 35 series in a row. If you lose game 1, I'm going to say it again. If you lose game 1, they've lost at least 35 series in a row. All they have to do to prove to me that they're legit is win a damn series and do it consistently. Stack series wins. I don't care about winning streaks. I don't care about how good you look during your wins. But if you're not going to walk away with series wins, then we are not doing anything. They have 4 series wins in the season, Justin. 4. 3 to garbage teams. 4 wins. It has to be better. That's what I need to see.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right, off the bench, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ring, Jacob Tissett. Biggest news this week when it came to the Cincinnati Reds obviously was, of course, Pete Rose night. That really wasn't news. We knew that was one of their bigger promotions of the season. But the day before, it was announced that Pete Rose would be reinstated back into baseball. And I think we've spent a lot of time on that this week at length in our thoughts on Pete being reinstated back into baseball. But now, obviously, all the attention turns towards the next big hurdle, which is Pete Rose getting in to the Hall of Fame. And yesterday we did catch up with Marty Brenneman, who is going to come on with us next Tuesday to talk about this very thing. But while we're sitting here heading into the weekend, guys, it's been a big week for Pete Rose news. A lot of people upset that he's been reinstated. Other people are thrilled that he's been reinstated. And then there's people like me in the middle where I'm happy he's been reinstated, but at the same time, I baseball all of a sudden pretending now that they, okay, well, you bet on baseball. It's all right. We'll reinstate you now, months after he passed away. But the next hurdle is the Hall of Fame. Buy or sell, Pete Rose will be a Hall of Famer. Buy or sell?
I'm going to sell. Baseball and their writers and the voters for this, they hold grudges. They have vendettas. For something that's supposed to not be personal, they make it more personal than anybody else in any sport. So for that reason, Pete Rose is not going to be in the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose, and again, I'm not a Pete Rose defender. I'm not a fan of the human being. I didn't know Pete Rose. I never talked to Pete Rose. But from the stories that I was told, the person that I knew, which was not the baseball player, I only knew the person, trying to sell autographs as much as he could and write books, and he was stubborn. That was the Pete that I knew. And I'm not a big Pete Rose person guy. I am a big Pete Rose, the player guy. And that's what the Hall of Fame is. It's about honoring players. It's about honoring managers, what they've accomplished in the game. And for that reason, he should be in. But we know that that's not going to be the case. Pete Rose didn't admit to what he did for 15 years or whatever it was. Everything that happened here is probably Pete Rose's fault. But saying that, Major League Baseball made that decision. I don't know if it was supposed to be an insult. I don't really know, but I think Pete knew it was coming. I think everybody who knew Pete knew it was coming, that Major League Baseball was going to allow him to be reinstated the second that he died. I'm not a big fan of that, and I think the writers of Major League Baseball are going to hold this vendetta against him the same way they hold it against, athletes who use steroids, the athletes like Barry Bonds. So that's what I think. I'm going to sell that he's going to make the Hall of Fame.
The only reason I think he might have a chance is because it's not the writers voting on him. He'll be on the classic ballot, which will be former players, Hall of Famers, and then veteran writers, not the current AP. So maybe those older players that did know Pete Rose, the player, lean that way and think that, it means a little bit more and he should be in. I'm going to sell it because of when the MLB did this. This all just feels like, how many more times can we twist the knife in Pete Rose and the Rose family while he's gone, not give him his moment, do it right before Pete Rose night at Great American Ballpark, just so there's some kind of cloud hanging over it, and he doesn't get his fair due. I think the Reds organization and Reds fans did a phenomenal job, and it really wasn't brought up much when the whole ordeal for the Pete Rose night beforehand. So, yeah, I'm going to sell it, sadly. I think it's great that when you talk about the Baseball Hall of Fame, this is one of the first things brought up. two of the most iconic and best players in the history of the sport are not in the Baseball Hall of Fame, Barry Bonds and Pete Rose. So I hope that they never get in if they aren't going to do it the right way. I think if Pete Rose doesn't get to stand up there and give his speech like he should have, then I don't need him in. It's not for him at that point. It's for baseball to say, we got him in, we did something right, and didn't give him his moment. Look at us. And I don't think that's what it's for. I think it's for the player and the family, and they're trying to take that away from him. And Baseball Hall of Fame should not be taken seriously without Pete Rose and a lot of other guys that aren't in it, but certainly without Pete Rose in it.
Yeah, I've always said the fact that it seems like, and I don't know what the criteria is. I don't know if there's a checklist to get into heaven, but I feel like getting into heaven is significantly easier than getting into baseball's Hall of Fame. I mean, I feel like, Pete, when he entered the pearly gates, I think there was a lot less trouble getting him into heaven than what is going on down here with all the gatekeepers trying to get him into the Hall of Fame. And for that reason right there, and I know you mentioned it, the process is a little different. You're going to have, former players, Hall of Fame players that are going to give him a little bit of the nod. I actually think it's the older riders, the retired riders. I think they're more the problem than anything, because those very riders are the ones that spent their entire careers making it, their main life's goal to keep him out of the Hall of Fame.
Right.
What I don't know, and I'm not going to pretend to know how this process works 100%. I don't know what the vote percentage is, like how much of the vote.
3/4, 16.
3/4.
16 members. You need 12 votes.
Okay. So of the rider, how many riders though?
That I do not know. The Classic
That's
Baseball
fine.
Committee
Sorry.
shall consist of 16 members comprised of members of the National Baseball Hall of Fame, executives, and veteran media members. I believe that rotation changes year by year, vote by vote. Those are just the people who are eligible for that committee. The first vote won't be till 2027. So the committee voting on Pete Rose, I'm not even entirely sure if it's decided yet.
All right. Well, fair enough. But yeah, without knowing how all of that breakdown is, how much power do the riders have, and even in that realm will be interesting. Casey, you might know this one. What is the most prestigious Hall of Fame that Pete Rose is actually currently a part of?
I'm not sure.
Casey.
What would that be?
He is a WWE Hall of Famer. Did you know that?
Oh!
What? Is he really?
He is. Look it up. Type it in. Look it up. Pete Rose. I can't remember the year, but yes, he was inducted into the WWE Hall of
That's
Fame.
awesome.
WWE did a huge playoff of this because they wouldn't let him in the Hall of Fame. So as a bit, they put Pete Rose into their Hall of Fame, and they got a lot of attention. He showed up for whatever reason in that little chicken costume, and Kane, the big red machine, as you know him, Casey, tombstoned him. He took a tombstone. The Hit King took a tombstone pile driver in the middle of the ring at WrestleMania. He is a WWE Hall of Famer. So regardless, buy or sell, he'll get into the Hall of Fame. He's already in the Hall of Fame, baby. He's in the most important Hall of Fame out there, Casey McAllister's WWE Hall of Fame.
That's right. I love that. The big giant chicken costume. I'm going to have to look this up too.
And you know what, Casey? This will make you happy. He's in the WWE Hall of Fame, and you know who's not? That bum Jey Uso that you hate so much. All right?
Bum.
Jey Uso's yeeting on the outside of the Hall of Fame, and Pete Rose, rest in peace. He left this earth as a WWE Hall of Famer. Can't take that away from him, no matter how Rob Manfred tries. So
Banners fly forever.
That's right.
Yep. All right, off the bench. We'll be right back. Casey's looking that up. I can hear his fingers just typing fast over there. We'll be right back. We're off the bench next. All right, and we are back off the bench. Casey, did you find it? Did you find OP in the Hall of Fame for WWE? I heard you typing.
I did find him. Here's a good image for those on YouTube right here.
Oh yeah.
That's
the
a
big red
legend.
machine. Look at him.
Hall
He's
of Famer.
selling it too.
Hall of Fame.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Elliot, I can't believe you didn't know that. You call yourself a Reds fan.
Yeah, I should have known that one. I actually
You call yourself a wrestling head.
I knew
Yeah.
he was. I knew he was. I don't know, he wrestled. I knew he was a part of the WWE at one point. I didn't know that. I didn't know he was in the Hall of Fame though.
What I want to go back and find is, I don't know, like usually when you get in the WWE Hall of Fame, you give a speech. I want to know if Pete Rose gave a speech. That's something we'll have to look up for later on. Maybe we'll break that out next week.
They can just play it on a projector in Cooperstown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. But all right, we'll continue on with buy or sell. We'll move over to the NFL. We'll take a look at the Cincinnati Bengals right now. Back-to-back seasons, the Bengals have missed the playoffs. Back-to-back seasons, you circle the month of September, and that seems to be the main culprit right there. Obviously, 2 years ago, Joe Burrow getting hurt obviously didn't help. But September, 1-3 start in 2024 in the month of September, 1-3 start in the month of September in 2023. Back-to-back seasons where you get off to a hot start. Then they obviously get rolling, one of the hottest teams in football, and they spend the rest of the season trying to dig themselves out of a hole that they created themselves in the first month. Obviously, I know you guys focused on the schedule release from 2 nights ago. We now know what the Bengals schedule looks like. We've always known who they're going to play. We now know when they're going to play them. The month of September for the Cincinnati Bengals, they open up the season at Cleveland on September 7th, and then they'll welcome in the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 1 p.m. kickoff on the 14th. Then they'll be on the road for the next 2. They're on the road for 3 of the first 4 games in the month of September, at Minnesota on the 21st and at Denver on the 29th. That's what their schedule looks like for the month of September, guys. So buy or sell, the Cincinnati Bengals will finish September with at least 3 wins. Buy or sell.
I'm selling it. I don't think there's any way the Bengals make it through those 4 games with 3 wins. My initial prediction, I had them losing to Cleveland and at Denver on Monday Night Football. I think it'd be crazy to say that they're going to get through that stretch with 3 wins. It's much harder than it's been the last few years, and this team doesn't start hot. So hopefully I'm wrong, and hopefully I'm losing money those first few games trying to hedge my emotions, but man, if the Bengals don't start fast this year, they're digging themselves a serious hole. You get a division game in week 1. You got another AFC game in week 2. Those are the 2 biggest ones you got to get. Obviously, you'd love to beat Minnesota. You'd love to beat Denver. And then as we get into October, there's some tough games as well. But you got to win those first 2 games against easier teams on your schedule to try to get the ball rolling. If they start 2-0, I think it's a lock that they get to 3 and maybe even 4. But if they start 1-1 or, God forbid, 0-2, it could snowball pretty quickly. So I'm going to sell this just out of a lack of optimism. There's going to be some serious organizational change by how we start this season.
I wanted to sell it, but they have to know, like Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow, they for whatever reason, it doesn't work in September. Whatever method they have, it just stops working once you start the season. I'm hoping they realize that now, because that like Joe Burrow has to look back at that Patriots game every night. And he has to say, what happens if I showed up for 20% more of that game? They win that game, they make the playoffs, and who knows what they do when you're playing your best football come the postseason, which is what they were doing. They have to look at that and say, you know what, all right, whatever goes wrong this offseason, whatever that drama is with Trey Hendrickson, I don't know when we're going to sign our first-round draft picks, whenever all this stuff concludes, we need to be ready for week 1. You have to beat the Browns. And to be quite honest, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to your former team, Kenner, that game shouldn't be close. I mean, it just shouldn't be close. The Bengals need to win that game. They need to come out hot. They need to come out strong. And they need to dominate. They need to show they can dominate in September, because they haven't shown that yet. The Jaguars, I don't believe, are a good team. I think they might be underrated by me and pretty much everybody else. But I don't think they're that good. I still don't think they're a great team. If you don't start 2-0 this year, I don't know when you'll ever start 2-0. I don't think the Vikings are good. I think you're going to be able to beat the Vikings given the quarterback situation. So who knows? I think the Bengals, if you're not going to do it this year, you're never going to do it. I'm going to say Joe Burrow thinks about that Patriots loss in week 1 last year, and he learns from it, and he grows from it, and they're able to beat the Cleveland Browns in dominating fashion, take that momentum to play Jacksonville at home. You win that one, and then from there, I think it starts the avalanche of, all right, the Bengals are ready to go this season. So I'm gonna say they start with 3 wins. I'm gonna buy this because I think that this is the year they have to. Back-to-back missing the postseason seasons, and they're not going to go for 3.
Fair enough. Again, buy or sell the Cincinnati Bengals getting at least 3 wins in the first month of the season after 1-3 starts in the last 2 seasons in the month of September. 3 of the first 4 games this season for your Bengals. For our Bengals are on the road, of course, at Cleveland, at home against Jacksonville, and then, of course, you have Minnesota and Denver on the road. I think that Denver game is going to be tough, especially on the road, but that'll be in prime time. Cincinnati always rises up. They always play their best games in those spots, which is wild because that used to be their Achilles heel as far as that goes. Guys, what record do they have to have in September for it not to be put in the category of a slow start? Because that's the narrative with this team is the slow start every year. What's the record that they have to have at the end of September for it not to be deemed a Zach Taylor, Cincinnati Bengals traditional slow start to the season?
2-2 is more than fine. You're an underdog in 2 of those games on the road. I'm really not worried if you lose to a Minnesota team that won 14 games last year and a Denver team that made the playoffs as well, with probably one of the worst defensive matchups for the Bengals in the entire league. They have the best secondary by a mile when it comes to outside corners and safety help, which is obviously what the Bengals like to do at a higher percentage than anyone in the league. So that's a nightmare matchup, and Bo Nix proved that he can do a lot, and we don't know what the secondary is going to look like on our side of things going into that game, and they have some serious weapons. So, yeah, the Broncos scare me quite a bit, and I think Minnesota is going to be a sneaky team as well. If you can get to 2-2, I really don't care how you do it. It's definitely the easiest to explain if you beat Cleveland and Jacksonville and then lose those 2 away games.
Fair enough. All right. So one of the things that's interesting about that week 1 matchup with Cleveland is obviously with all the changes that the Bengals have made to this roster, whether it be obviously extensions done to current stars like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and putting those distractions behind them. You bring in Al Golden. Obviously, there's a lot of faith that a lot of the same players from previous seasons, just, again, another season, more experience and all that. There's going to be a gradual improvement on the defensive side, possibly started to see that towards the tail end of last year. But, again, we all know how important Trey Hendrickson is when it comes to how this team is going to operate defensively. Buy or sell, with all the noise going on right now with Trey Hendrickson, guys, buy or sell Trey Hendrickson sitting out week 1 against the Cleveland Browns for your Bengals?
I'm going to buy it. I think he misses week 1, and I think that's it. I think he's back out there in week 2 at home against the Jaguars. If week 1 was at home, I would sell this. I think they're going to have it worked out by their home opener against the Jaguars. I do think he misses week 1 against the Browns.
I'm going to sell it. I think he's going to play. I think all these threats of him not playing, I think that all sounds good right now in May when you're able to flaunt that a little bit. When it comes time to paying fines and losing millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think you're going to have a different attitude. So whether or not he's going to be happy playing for the Bengals in week 1, that's a different story. He's going to be in a jersey, I believe, week 1. I don't think he's going to be willing, as somebody who clearly needs the money, I don't think he's going to be willing to lose money.
And I hear that when people say, well, he needs the money. I think it's just one of those where he is literally watching that position, financially explode around the league. And although, he's getting the 16 or 20, whatever it is, it's just one of those. I don't think he's poor by any means. I just think it's like it sickens him knowing how much he's producing, that he's not getting the same dollar amounts of the Crosbys and the Garretts and the others. Obviously, if we would have done this a week ago, Elliot, I would have agreed with you. I would have said there's no chance he sits out games or whatever. But what we saw the other day, that was not unhinged by any means, but that was an emotional reaction on his end. He got pissed because Zach Taylor texted him to remind him that he would be fined if he doesn't arrive for practices. That was something that I didn't think was that big a deal. I thought it was common sense, but that triggered him. He showed up unannounced. We had Jay Morrison on earlier in the week, and that's what I found most interesting about. Another interesting point about our conversation with him is Jay and no media member expected him to show up to practice that day. And it wasn't as if they announced that, hey, he is going to show up today. He's going to address the media at the beginning of practice. He just walked in. He walked over to the side of the field. The media started to gather around him, and for 23 minutes, just unhinged, just went off on everything that he possibly could to give his side. I think he's very emotional, and unless he calms down, and I don't think he will, I think it's going to just stew in him for the next couple of months, and I think it's going to get even more frustrating when camp gets around. After what we saw the other day, I'm on Jacob's side on this one. I'm going to buy it. I think he at least sits, kind of like that Chris Jones thing from a few years ago with the Chiefs, that they ended up losing that game, too, against the Lions, and then all of a sudden you start to feel that angst a little bit, and then Jones gets a deal done. The front office gets a deal done. Maybe that's something similar that happens here. I don't know, but I do buy it. I buy him sitting out week one if something doesn't get resolved between now and when training camp starts. Casey, where are you, buy or sell Trey Hendrickson sitting out week one against the Browns?
Yeah, I buy it. I think that there's a good chance that he sits out week one. I don't know how many games past that he sits out, but that's the only leverage he has, and he's gonna not lose a bunch of money either. So week one seems like a lock. Week two is kind of up in the air, and I think the Bengals will eventually get him done too. So. Yeah,
it won't be. It won't be the whole season. We all know this because the only person that's done it in the modern era is Le'Veon Bell, and that was a complete and utter failure on Le'Veon Bell's part. So I think he has to know that it's not going to work if he does that, and it's gonna. I mean, I don't want to use the word bankrupt, but it's going to put a pretty serious dent in his finances if he were to do that. So he's not going to do that. You mentioned that it makes him sick that what that position's valued at now. I wish his agent knew that. I wish his agent knew that, and I wish he knew it when he signed the initial contract that he's playing under right now, that he's obligated to play under. I wish they were aware of that 2 years ago or last year or every single year that he complains about this contract. I thought he looked absolutely terrible. I thought he looked terrible when he spoke to the media or whatever that was on the practice field while his teammates were working their ass off behind him, and he's sitting there in that golf polo. I wish he probably knew how bad he came off, at least to me. As a fan of the Bengals, as somebody who likes Trey Hendrickson, I don't want to see Trey Hendrickson miss games. I don't want to see our guy, upset with the organization. But he is because of decisions that he made, of decisions that his agent made. That's not the Bengals. That's Trey Hendrickson. He's not sitting out games. I don't believe so.
All right, next up as we wrap up buy or sell with the Cincinnati Bengals here. Buy or sell, Joe Burrow winning his first MVP in 2025. Buy or sell?
I'm going to sell it because I'm more optimistic about this Bengals season, and I hope they win some games. I mean, I think it's very tough to give a quarterback an MVP when you put one season next to the last one, and the numbers are significantly worse. And if the Bengals are going to win 11, 12, 13 games this year, compete for the AFC North, and try to win a Super Bowl like a lot of us think their ceiling is, Joe Burrow's numbers are going to be a lot worse than last year. Because you're going to have a defense that can get stops, and you're going to have a run game that's somewhat competent in the first 5 weeks of the season, and you're going to be able to dribble the clock out, and you're going to be able to control the time in the games and have more regimented possessions and not have to go 70-yard bombs every single time you get the ball because you have to score immediately because you're going to have to score again. You can't give them the last possession. Hopefully that's not the case for the Bengals this year. And sitting here in May, I still have optimism that this is going to be a playoff team and a really good, close to well-rounded team. And when I say well-rounded, I just mean not 27th, I mean 16th. That's all I want. Fair. And that leads this team to be pretty close to what we need them to be to compete for a Super Bowl. So for those reasons, I think it's going to help the Bengals if Joe Burrow doesn't play worse this year, but has worse counting numbers. And I think that'll cost him an MVP, and I think it could help the Bengals win a Super Bowl.
I'm going to buy it. I think Joe Burrow wins an MVP this year. I think he's playing the best football of his career. I think he's coming off an offseason where he gets all of his weapons back. He gets Mike Gesicki, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins all back with him. I think they're going to be dominant this year. I think they're going to take a look at what last year, and they're going to be playing with a chip on their shoulder. They knew last year, probably around Game 5, that if they don't score 55 points, they're not going to win football games. And I think this year he knows what he has to do. He has to play perfect, he has to show up, and he has to show out. That's what Joe Burrow is going to do this season. I think he's going to win the MVP. I firmly believe that. He didn't win the MVP last year because they didn't win enough games. My argument this year is that he's going to win enough games.
Yeah, that was my big pushback last year when people were adamant that he should have won MVP last year. I just said this isn't a Bengals take or a Burrow take. It's just I'm not a fan of any quarterback winning an MVP when you don't make the playoffs. And even if it wasn't his fault, that's just kind of where I stood on the matter. Jake brings up a lot of good points because I think we talked about this last season. It wasn't a shot at Burrow, but I thought a lot of the stats that he threw up last year were inflated due to team circumstances, not his fault. I mean, that's why he's elite, is because you could win games with him not throwing for, you could win games in a season where he's not throwing for 4,700 yards and 40 touchdowns. But when you have no other options offensively or defensively, he can also throw for 4,700 yards and 40 plus touchdowns, and the completion percentage through the roof and everything else. It would be interesting if last season's numbers cost him an MVP this upcoming season, because I'm with Jake. I don't think his numbers are going to come close to what they were last year, but as Bengals fans, you shouldn't want that either. I know that sounds weird. You should not want Joe Burrow throwing for 4,700 yards and 40 touchdowns, because if that's the case, that means you're behind in a lot of games. That means you're being forced to not hand the ball off and run the football. That means you can't run the football. That means your defense is bad. I think if he has a statistically worse, and I'm saying worse in quotations here, if he has a statistically worse season than last year, that's a good thing, because that means that they're not as dependent on his arm to go out there and single-handedly win football games. Now it's just going to be up to the voters if they look at that and say, well, he regressed from one season to the next, and that's absolutely not what it's going to be. It's just going to be a matter of perception. I will say I'm going to buy it if they win the division. I think even if his numbers are worse than last year, if they win the division, I think he's MVP this year as far as that goes. So we'll see what ends up happening.
Everett Henry does put a good point in the chat, and he said that weren't Josh Allen's numbers worse the year he won MVP than the year before, and he's absolutely right. Yes. But I think that what drove that was voter fatigue against Lamar Jackson. I think that could work in Joe Burrow's favor this year. If it's those three at the top, and all three of their numbers are pretty similar, and Joe is ahead of Lamar in the AFC North standings, I think he could get that nod as they try to spread all this stuff out among these great quarterbacks in the league. I think there is somewhat of a goal of the NFL not to have all of these MVPs. You can't control Super Bowls, but not to have all these MVPs in one spot. Mahomes already has two. Lamar has two. Josh Allen. I think they would like to get Burrow one. So if the Bengals are good enough and he puts up good enough numbers, I could certainly see them leaning that way in an effort, not necessarily for anything Joe Burrow did or didn't do, but if there's an excuse to give it to him, to give him the acknowledgement maybe he deserved last year.
Right or wrong, fair or not, I am curious your guys' thoughts. Will the fact that he has Jamar and T work against him in that consideration? One thing, and I know I annoyed people last year with this, it wasn't a trolling thing. I was a fan of Josh Allen winning the MVP, even over Lamar, because I thought he did more with less. I know he had a hell of a run game, very good offensive line, but he wasn't throwing to the same receivers that, pass catchers even, that a Patrick Mahomes had, or a Justin Herbert, or some of these other even Jalen Hurts, and I don't put him in the category with the Josh Allens and Joe Burrows. But if all things are equal and all quarterbacks are having a great season, do you think that works against Joe Burrow, the fact that, okay, well, he has Jamar and T, those others don't, and look what they're doing? Does that work against Joe Burrow in your opinion?
No, because the metrics that go into quarterback assistance and all the other stats and how much they help, the stats incorporate offensive line and defense and everything as well. And the Bengals are significantly worse than the Bills or Ravens or Chiefs in all of those categories. Josh Allen actually led the league in terms of that quarterback help stat last year, with the best offensive line of MVP candidates by a significant margin, the best run game of MVP candidates without quarterback rushing by a significant margin. And the Chiefs, obviously, we know what Steve Spagnuolo has been able to do on defense. So there's a lot more that goes into what a quarterback's helped by than just what big name receivers does he have. I know, Josh Allen might not have a Jamar Chase or a T. Higgins, but Khalil Shakur is a pretty damn good slot receiver, and he has two great tight ends in Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox is the other one that's been there for many, many years, and he is the best offensive line in football with a pretty dang good defense as well. We know what the Chiefs are able to do, and we talk about the Bengals coaching staff a lot as well. I mean, Andy Reid, Sean McDermott, Harbaugh, or Zach Taylor. I think that matters as well for what you're asking your quarterback to do. So, yeah, I don't think that's a negative against Joe Burrow. I actually think when you look at the overall with how much these MVP candidates get assisted by their roster, I think it's a positive for Joe Burrow in these discussions, and it'll actually bump him up in a lot of these rankings.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, the Bengals, they've missed the playoffs the last 2 years. Will they make the playoffs this season? Of course, that's going to be the big question. I think when healthy, yes. I think this is a playoff team, but let's talk about those playoffs, because apparently – the draft for the NFL is just fine, and you all got onto me for wanting to change the draft. I think that the playoffs in the NFL is just fine. So what is your reaction to the possibility of people out there trying to change the format of the NFL playoffs? We'll discuss when we come back, more off the bench when we return. The NFL playoffs, I mean, that's so far off in the distance. I'm more excited about week 1 of the NFL season than I am about the postseason, but we all love the postseason. The postseason for the NFL is one of the more entertaining postseasons out there, no doubt, but are there some flaws with it? Are the flaws big enough to make some drastic changes? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Is it broke? Jake, I'll start with you. What's going on right now? Apparently there's some reports out there that, well, there's some considerations potentially for some changes to the NFL playoffs.
A proposal brought by the Detroit Lions back in March will officially be voted on next week. NFL owners will meet and vote next week to radically change playoff seeding, doing it strictly by record and reseeding after the first round. The tush-push play will also be voted on in this meeting next week. Detroit's proposal will be for the 4 division champions and then 3 wildcard teams in each conference to make the playoffs. Those 7 teams would be seeded strictly by record rather than assigning the top seeds to division champions. With how it's done now, obviously the division champions are above, and that hurt the Lions last year when the Vikings won the division and they were forced to go on the road. Or actually the inverse of that. The Lions won the division and the 14-win Vikings had to go on the road and were eliminated in the first round. If teams with the same record as the division champions are the tiebreaker. So that would be if you have a wild card of 15 wins and a division champ of 15 wins, the division champ would still get that nod for the higher seed in the home game, but not alone. So I think this is terrible because I think we've seen this happen with the NBA. They're trying to attack things in the NBA that they've done to increase viewership and stuff like that, but I feel like the NFL just doesn't have those same problems. We had that conversation yesterday about the NFL draft lottery and how we both think that would be a pretty terrible idea. And we've seen the NBA do this as well, to reseed without the divisions in the playoffs. And has it worked for the NBA? Absolutely. The regular season is meaningless. But in the NFL, the regular season means something. And that's why every Sunday, if you look at the top 50 sporting events in terms of viewership in the country at the end of the year, 47, 48 of them are NFL games. Those are regular season games that are getting viewership up there with the NBA Finals and the World Series. Hell, even the Olympics. It's crazy how many people watch NFL games. And all you're doing is eliminating some of that by removing the divisions. Can you even tell me who the divisions are in the NBA?
No.
No one can. No. Only the diehard of diehards can tell you who won the Metropolitan this year. And I actually think that's hockey. Those divisions are terrible because they don't mean anything. I love the divisions in the NFL. I love playing in the AFC North. It means something to me. I talk about the AFC North all the time that, hey, the Bengals play in the best division in football. They have my whole life, and I'm proud of that. I love playing the Steelers twice a year. How will this affect scheduling?
Yeah.
Are we going to do away with home and away division games? You're going to take away my trip to Baltimore every year? I'm not going to see the Steelers play in Paycor? That's crazy to me. This is the lifeblood of the NFL. It's divisional rivalries. It's trying to get there before you get to the playoffs. It allows a stepping stone before the first round of the playoffs that means something that you can root for the first 16 weeks. I don't have any idea what the NFL would even possibly think they'd gain from removing this.
Sports are always trying to change. You see that in baseball. You see that in the NBA. God knows you see it in the NBA and in Major League Baseball. Hockey, I would say is pretty tame on when it comes to making sport-defining changes. Jacob just read off the stat that pretty much the NFL leads the country in most watched games. Right. Like most of the most watched broadcasts, and that's not just sports, that's anything.
It's any broadcast.
Is the NFL. The NFL playoffs. Kenner mentioned it's one of the best it is the best playoffs. It's the best postseason we have. And it's that way because they have it's the same postseason we've grown to know. It all matters. It all matters the same. It weighs the same. And it weighs a lot. It makes zero sense to change perfection. I'm not saying the NFL's exactly perfection, but it's as close to perfection of a sports league as you can get. So there's no reason for me, in my eyes, where the NFL would vote to change this because it takes away what it is. When you look at a bad division like the NFC South has been in past, like the AFC South has been in years past. That division matters so much. You're playing division games late in the season. You only got 8-7 wins, but you can still win that division, get into the playoffs, and who knows what happens when that happens. When you take that away, it loses what this league is, and that's truly that any given Sunday anybody can make a difference, and that's the mantra. That's how I've come to respect the league, and that's why I love watching the NFL. I watch every single NFL Sunday night football game. I watch every single Sunday Night Football game. I would say, a majority, probably 85%, 90% of Monday Night Football games. And I probably watch 90% of Thursday Night Football games. That's not the Bengals. That's just the league. You know? It doesn't make sense why the NFL would go out in these drastic changes. Minor changes like the tush push and stuff like that, that's fine. Every league needs to be cleaned up a little bit. You know, the kickoff rule,
right,
etc. Changing how the postseason's done like this, it's pretty drastic. It's a pretty drastic change in what it is. You know, Jacob brought up a good point. Like, can you name the
divisions.
The division of the NBA. I just looked up, like, if you type in NBA standings on Google, they don't show you the divisions.
No.
They just show you the Eastern Conference and Western Conference standings. If you look up NFL standings, it shows you who's leading what division, by how many games, you know? So it matters. And I don't know why they would make it not matter. I don't get that. I don't get why the NBA added those extra, 11 versus 10 or whatever seeds that is. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, some things make sense, some things don't. This makes zero sense why the NFL would change.
I agree. And, I mean, you talk about it there. We don't know about the NBA division or anything like that. But even as Bengals fans, right, we know how much the AFC North means to us. But you get Bills-Dolphins in primetime, we all look at that immediately and say, oh, that's another level because it's an AFC East divisional game. And even when you get to, like you said, with the worst divisions, you get Falcons-Bucks in late season, we're tuning into that because we know one of these 9-win teams that stinks is going to get into the playoffs.
And they're going to be a
it's
4
must-watch TV.
Yeah.
Like, it creates drama out of nothing.
Yeah.
Which is something that I don't know why you try to take that away and hurt the viewer. That's all it does, is it would hurt the viewer. What is a Bengals-Steelers game then? Especially if it's only once a year. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's just another game. It's the same as the Broncos game. It's the same as the Patriots game. All these games have added value because of the divisions and because of the rivalries that matter. We talked about it a lot at college football season this year. The expanded playoff killed rivalries. And that's part of college football that we loved to watch as fans. And the NFL doing this to change the playoffs would kill rivalries. How many major rivalries are there in the NFL that are not tied from the division? None?
Yeah, I would say very few. I'm trying to think of a Cowboys.
Right.
One, but
Cowboys-Niners because they played in the NFC Championship a bunch in the 80s.
Like maybe Bills-Patriots or
right.
Bills-Chiefs.
Like, we're reaching Bengals-Chiefs because of the playoffs over the last few years. Like, every major rivalry in the NFL is driven by 2 matchups a year in the same division.
Yeah.
I don't know why they'd take that away.
And the big question, I agree. I'm not going to repeat everything you guys said because I agree with everything. I think it's kind of silly. Not kind of. It's ridiculous. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The NBA, I don't like the changes they've made, but I understood that their ratings were plummeting and their popularity was plummeting, and they needed to make some changes to try to gravitate towards a younger audience or just recaptivate an old audience, whatever. Major League Baseball, they've made the proper changes. I wasn't a big fan of them at the beginning, but you got to give Rob Manfred credit. The majority of the changes he has made have been very, very effective in leading to an increase in ballpark attendance and ratings and interest in the sport across the board. So kudos to them. But Jake, you mentioned it. Those sports needed to make some of those changes because the NFL's fine. The NFL, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the question I have is, to be fair, the NFL's not throwing this out there for the teams to vote on. It's the Lions submitted this. What the hell do sometimes you could tell the rule changes. Like, I'm sure a lot of NFC East teams wanted to get rid of the tush push because they have to face the tush push twice a season. So it would make sense if the Cowboys are trying to ban the tush push or the Reds or the Commanders, whatever the hell they are now, or the Giants. But for the Lions, I just don't get what the motivating factor is to push this across the finish line. I don't get why they're pushing this, I guess, of all things. I don't know what the Lions benefit from this. They were 15-2. They were the 1 seed last year in the NFC to begin with. I just don't get the motivation behind the Lions to push this across the board.
I think that would be why right there. The fact that they were 15-2 and the 1 seed in the NFC, and they're 1 loss away from being the 5 seed and on the road. I think they saw it come so close to home last year that they wanted to put it out there, and I don't think there's any chance it gets changed this year. But one thing we do know about radical rule changes is as soon as they're in the air, it's more likely that they're going to happen at some point than not.
Yeah.
I would say the fact that they're voting on this year, we're going to get it at some point. And I don't know when, and it's not going to be now. But the only 2 divisions I think it makes sense to even propose this would be the Norths.
Yeah.
Ours or the NFC. Because we've seen time and time again where these divisions are comprised of 2 or 3 of the best teams in the conference in a given year, and 2 of those teams are going on the road, or one of those teams is out of the playoffs. Like, it's a tough pill to swallow. So And if the NFC North, if J.J. McCarthy can fill the shoes of Sam Darnold this year, I don't think anyone would be too shocked to say that there's 4 playoff teams in the NFC North.
Yeah.
AFC North, obviously, it depends on what the Browns are able to do. The Bengals missed it the last 2 years, but I still think if you're looking at that, you're saying 3 playoff teams and a Browns team that, has an exciting defense and just drafted Shedeur Sanders, who knows what they could become in the next few years. So, yeah, I think if anyone's going to propose it, it's the NFC North or the AFC North. I think it's terrible. I think it's anti-football, but I would imagine we're going to get it at some point.
Anti-football, he says. Anti-football.
It's a John Gruden
All right,
quote.
We are out of time on the radio side. I think Garrison was asking about this. Oh, look, it went down. Look, the hat. It pushed it all down. Look, it's almost nice.
I wouldn't say it got better.
It's not bad.
It changed.
It did change.
It changed. It was one thing, and now it's the other. Well, it's kind of the same.
There. That's not what it started with.
That is a wild haircut.
Flat
it's not
top.
a haircut.
It's almost a flat top.
It's just what. By the way, this isn't cut or anything like that. It's just usually I do something with it. I didn't do anything today, and it just
I feel like it's more brown usually, isn't it? Like I thought it was different colors. It always been like black like that.
I think so.
You think so? I didn't know you had the same color hair as me. I thought it was a little more different color. That's all right. I don't care. I was just saying it looks different.
What hair will I have on Monday? That's the big tease for next week's show.
Here's a question. How come you don't put your hair like inside the hat when you put the hat on? Like I can still see your hair when you put your hat on.
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like when I wear the hat, like my hair is hidden.
Well, to be fair, when I do the show in studio, look at the shadow.
Yeah.
Like people ask that all the time. I do get that all the time, but I do this because then the light comes down because then I have the shadow that covers my face. Yeah, it who cares, right? Who cares? Yeah.
Well, apparently the whole chat. They've been talking about your hat and your hair all show, so they care about it immensely.
Drew Garrison says, "Go to All Sports Barbers in Centerville, Ohio. Tell Brent he sent you."
Well, I will go and tell Brett hi, but I don't know. This is the first time I've been working with you guys for a year. I've never showed up to work like this before. Technically, didn't show up to work today.
That's true. That's true. There's no dress code for virtual work.
No. But remember what I said when we come back on Monday, the Reds would have swept the Guardians.
And if they don't, you're going to be bald. Thanks, everybody.
No. No, the last time I did one of those little things, I'm a Bengals fan now, so I can't. I'm going to be very cautious with my next one. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. That wraps it up for us. Until next week, this has been Off the Bench. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett. One of the other buyer sells I had was for the Steelers, just because we have to do it, right? Like every year we throw it out, and every year we feel kind of confident. I saw Dan Orlovsky put out the other day that he sees the Steelers starting out 0-6. He sees a path to 0-6. Are the Steelers and Mike Tomlin, are they on the brink of Mike Tomlin's 500 record consecutive season streak coming to an end? I mean, are things that bad in Pittsburgh right now? They do. Everyone says they have the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. And as a former Browns fan, that's music to my ears.
Yeah, they have the worst quarterback in the situation in the NFL if Aaron Rodgers doesn't sign there. And do you think they just scheduled Jets Steelers on opening night just for fun? You think that's just a coinky-dink?
The other thing, too, like I'm seeing all these reports of the Steelers pursuing Chris Olave. You know, you move on obviously, from your distraction wide receiver, one of many that they've collected over the years and have moved on from. But, you move on from George Pickens, and I thought, okay, you move on from George Pickens. Maybe they're throwing in the towel. They're not quitting on the season, but they're just going to roll in there with the soldiers they have and see what they do. And if they accidentally find themselves with the high draft pick next year, coincidentally, it's in a big quarterback draft season too, so it could be a win-win for them. But you're right. I haven't heard anything about the Aaron Rodgers thing in a while, but when you look at the way the NFL scheduled them that night and you look at the fact that they're still in the wide receiver market, are they really trying that hard to get Mason Rudolph help? Hell no. They're trying to get Aaron Rodgers help. I'm just curious when Aaron Rodgers is going to announce it. Maybe it's when he comes off his high from the ayahuasca. I don't know. But we'll see what happens.
It's dark. He doesn't have any connection. But you said 0-6 start. Look, I love Orlovsky. Good dude. Puts out good content. That's one of the worst takes I've ever heard on national television. Number one, the Steelers just don't do that. So to predict them to go 0-6 this year is somewhat crazy. Do you want to guess how many playoff teams from last year the Steelers play in the first 7 weeks? 6 games, 1 bye?
3.
How about 1? Oh. Jets, Seahawks, Patriots, Vikings, Browns, Bengals. Just the Vikings.
Yeah.
They're not going 0-6. Could they struggle? Sure. I think the Patriots are going to be much better this year. Obviously, I think the Bengals are going to be much better this year. If Aaron Rodgers isn't up to speed, they could certainly lose that game to the Jets. They're not above that with Mason Rudolph behind center. Seahawks, for sure. Who knows what Sam Darnold is this year? But to predict a team that hasn't gone below 500 in damn near 20 seasons, to start 0-6, you think they're going to finish the season 9-2?
Yeah.
I guess.
Do you think it's more of an I wonder if Orlovsky's take, because they were talking about the QB situation in the NFL. I think that's more of an indictment on Mason Rudolph than it is the Steelers as a whole, correct? Like, I think that's how down they are. Although Mason Rudolph has a 500 record with the Steelers as a starting quarterback, and people forget that.
Yeah, I mean, they've been able to win with Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, any quarterback that they've thrown out there, they still win games. We know the Steelers aren't going to win in the playoffs. We know that going into every season. But they do start every season hot and then tail off at the back end. That's what happens every single time the Steelers suit up for a season. So I think 0-6 is ludicrous. I think it's ludicrous.
Mason Rudolph, 18 starts with the Steelers. They are 9-8 and 1. So the thing about Tomlin, regardless of who the quarterback has been, they win football games regardless of who's under center. But I get it. Mason Rudolph is a very underwhelming quarterback. That's an underwhelming quarterback for a Pittsburgh Steelers team that we keep waiting for them to take that next big jump, and they just seem to be content winning anywhere between 8 to 10 games per season, being the little engine that just, I think I can. They're a great story, but at some point that story is going to run very, very dry, and it's going to come down to, can you win a playoff game? The Browns have won more playoff games than the Steelers since they last won the Super Bowl. So, that's a problem for Pittsburgh when it's all said and done. They got to figure that stuff out. Mason Rudolph's not it, but I think it's all what we've just said. All the stuff, the tea leaves are forming to show that Aaron Rodgers is going to be their quarterback next year. I highly doubt. The Jets aren't interesting enough to carry the matchup of them and the Steelers in primetime without Aaron Rodgers. So, we'll see what happens.
I don't think the Steelers are – listen, I don't think the Steelers – if it is Mason Rudolph, I do believe they will have a losing record for the first time in 200 years. But saying that, if they have Aaron Rodgers, they're going to have a winning record. They're going to be competitive. They're going to fight for the playoffs. Whether or not they win a game, who cares? They're going to be in the playoffs. So that means just another team the Bengals have to worry about during the regular season twice. So that's no fun. That's no fun to me.
I will say I think it's pretty funny that they're kind of emptying the clip on terrible NFL takes the same week that ESPN drops the $29.99 a month exclusive subscription plan for their channel.
Yeah. So
if you want to talk about the NFL draft lottery, the Steelers going 0-6, and Mel Kiper and Shadur Sanders, pay $30. Come on down.
Something else that popped up for baseball right here, but Fox Sports MLB put this out on X. The AL Central currently right now holds 4 playoff spots. Do you guys think the AL Central is the best division in baseball?
I think they're competitive. I don't think the AL Central is the best division in baseball. They have the Twins, they have the Royals, they have the Guardians, and the Tigers. Those are all decent competitive teams. Do I think any one of those teams can win a World Series? Maybe the Tigers, I think, could possibly do it. Outside of the Tigers, I don't think anybody else.
Yeah, I don't think you think the Tigers can win a World Series?
No.
Okay, right. Yeah,
if I had to say one.
It's fun. Probably be the best division in baseball for a little bit longer. won't end up being. I mean, it'll be a team with $300 million that wins the trophy.
Correct.
It's going to take the AL Central is going to take a major hit this weekend, especially when the Cincinnati Reds sweep the Guardians. Am I right? I mean, like at that point, they're going to be looked at in a lot different light after the 3 games coming up. Elliot, he doubts, but I'm telling you, on Monday, I can't wait to talk about the Reds sweeping the Guardians on Monday.
I'm excited on Monday too. I'm actually really excited to talk about the Reds' big victory over the Guardians.
The one.
Big victory.
Which do you think is Friday, Saturday, or Sunday?
Don't get
Saturday.
swept.
They win on
They don't
Saturday.
get
Saturday.
They always lose and then win and then lose. Or
Fair
they
enough.
win and they lose.
The funny thing about 3-game series with our beloved Redlegs is if you lose the first or the second game, you lose the series.
You lose the series. That's what I'm
Guaranteed.
saying. It's either you have to win both to then win the series,
Right.
but that doesn't happen.
No.
So it's the only scenario is lose, win, lose, or win, lose.
Yeah, it's like you can't expect this team
Or
to...
I guess lose.
You can't expect teams in the MLB to sweep.
No.
You also can't expect the Reds to win series unless they win the first 2 games or sweep.
They would have to sweep or win the
So
first
we can't
2
expect them to
games,
sweep, but we also need them to sweep.
Did we win the first 2 games in the Cardinals series?
No.
Or did we win 1, lose 2, and then win 1?
Yes, I
Okay.
believe.
I'm trying to find this too because we have Marty coming on next week. I thought we shared it on our socials, but Marty going off on Rob Manfred.
Yes,
With,
we played it yesterday, I believe.
Oh, you did? All right.
We
well,
talked
about it yesterday.
We talked about it yesterday, yeah.
If only I showed up to work. There you go. But yeah, Marty's on with us next Tuesday. So
Yeah, it'll be
there's
fun.
That. Yep. Anything else before we wrap up and head into the weekend?
I was trying to think of something.
Your Bearcats got a 7-footer. They
I
just
saw
keep
that.
adding.
Bearcats look good. Roster looks good again. Tell me if you heard that one before.
If
The
Bearcat
roster-
football and Bearcat basketball could win championships based on transfer portal recruiting before missing their respective postseason, they would have a lot of banners.
A lot
Yeah,
of
if Wes Miller could focus more on March Madness instead of May Madness, I think the Bearcat program would be in a little bit better shape right now. No, in all seriousness, it's all you can do at this point. Go out and get the best players possible. I don't know what the NIL situation is for Cincinnati, but it seems to be pretty solid.
Seems
they're pulling
legit.
in a lot of talent.
Yeah.
Like, I'll give them that because that's a football school. The Bearcats a football school or basketball school?
We were talking about this yesterday because, especially with the new legislation about the salary caps and everything about that, with the $20 million, you can't spend more in NIL. Schools like Cincinnati are in a very tough spot where I think they have to choose because you're not going to be able to be competitive in both.
I think that if they had to admit it, I mean, they never would. If they had to, in a private room and record what they think they are, I think they'd say they're a basketball school. I think it's about the Bearcats basketball program. I think it's always been about that. I think Luke Fickell was able to change it for a 2-year stretch, 3-year stretch. But outside of that, it's been basketball. It's always been basketball. And there was a large stretch of time where the Bearcats football program was a disgrace, and there was a large time where it was a little bit competitive. They've had 2 very, very competitive stretches in my lifetime where they were fighting for, in my opinion, at least championship. They're playing championship level football. But I think that they know deep down that it's like you're never going to win a national championship in football ever. You can win one. You can at least think you can win one in basketball. That's how at least I always think the Bearcats basketball program heading into every season. I'm like, yeah, we got a shot at it. It's March. Crazy things happen in college basketball. The Bearcats will have a shot. College football, you're not playing the same sport. You're not playing the same sport. Us and Alabama or Texas A&M. Texas A&M is they're still paying a coach $200 trillion on top of the elite roster that they have. So I think they're a basketball school.
That point right there is why I've said UC's not cut out for the Power 4. If you can't be competitive in both sports at the same time, then you're not a Power 4 school. You're just
There
not.
it is.
I mean,
They're Rutgers, they're Purdue, they're the Vanderbilts. You can pick one and be competitive. You can't be competitive at all.
But I also think being competitive in college football now is different than it was 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Well,
right?
you're acting like you're not in the Big 12. You're in a Power 4 conference. If you win it, you get a bye in the playoff.
That's what I'm saying. I think they're able to get that bye. I think the Bearcats football program can absolutely make the playoff without realistically expecting them to win a championship. But I still consider that to be competing.
I think if UC football makes a single playoff, they have a better chance to win a national championship than UC basketball. You have to win way less games.
The only reason I don't see it that way is because I think the rosters are so drastically different.
But that's what I'm saying is they shouldn't be. You should be able to recruit with the Big 12.
Sure. I understand that, I guess. And maybe you're right. I don't know. I get lost in this point when we start arguing the UC football, whether or not they're big Power 4.
I just think it all comes down to NIL, because if
Correct.
your NIL if your NIL is not strong enough to put a national or a playoff caliber roster in football together, what it's showing is NIL for Cincinnati, it's strong enough to put a very, very competitive college basketball team out there. So it's like, okay, if you have a NIL pool of money that is not good enough to put out a college football playoff team, but it is good enough to put up a college basketball program that is good enough to compete for a Final Four, I think you got to lean that way. It's a better business decision. Why take every NIL resource to go put together an average UC football team and then also impact the basketball program? I think you have to lean into one or the other depending on what it is. John Calipari, when he left Kentucky 2 seasons ago and he ends up going over to Arkansas, obviously, I've talked to a lot of Ohio State people that said he wanted the Ohio State job and Ohio State was semi-interested in him. But the one thing that they could not meet on the same page on is if Ohio State needs a third-string center and Ohio State needs a starting point guard, guess who is going to get that money? The third-string center for the football program is more important than the starting point guard for basketball, and Calipari's ego would not be able to handle that, and they just said damage control ahead of time. Let's not even go down that path, and that's why Arkansas said we're going to lean all into basketball, and every resource is about that, and that's why Calipari fits that. But Ohio State's saying we like basketball, we want to be better at basketball, but it's all about football, and that was never up for debate. But UC's interesting when it comes to that.
That's why I wish we could have different conferences for different sports. Let's have great basketball schools play each other in great conferences for basketball. And then let's have the schools that are competitive in football play each other in football. And then the schools that are great at baseball play each other for baseball.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't work because of money. I know it doesn't work because of TV deals, but that's the best thing for the sport. There's no reason we should make UC split their $25 million between football and basketball if they want to compete in basketball. But I'm sure the Big 12 is going to put some kind of constraints on how much money you have to give to football.
Yeah.
Because that's what keeps the lights on. So I wish there was a way, and I guess that way is the Big East, for teams that want to commit to commit to basketball. But I wish it wasn't so cut and dry that you have to lose the other one. There's got to be a way to fix college sports. The haves and the have-nots are getting way too far apart, and I think the only way to do that is to redo the divisions and split them up even more.
Well, that's why Rick Pitino, leaves New Mexico. Could have got any super high major program he wanted, and he goes and takes Xavier. That's not a shot at Xavier. It's a good basketball program. But he looks at, okay, I got to go somewhere where basketball is going to be the main priority. I could go to a bigger school. I can go, if Alabama job opens up for basketball, he could go there or he can go to Xavier. Xavier is the better basketball job. I know Jacob might jump off a roof me saying that. Alabama's doing just fine, by the way. That's why he's saying Cincinnati. If you can't fund both programs, then what are you doing? But the bottom line is he wanted to go to Xavier, where Xavier is the number one priority with basketball, and that's why he picked that job. So who knows? But look at that. We walked her right up to noon. Good job. Good job, fellas.
It's all about hire.
Good job. Yep. Yeah.
Should hire Chris Mack.
Really?
Did you see our guy Will Howard? Oh yeah. Did you see our guy Will Howard? Said UC. He said UC, Kansas State, Iowa State, those non-elite programs he had offers from in the portal, and he ended up going to Ohio State. Threw UC in there. Your guy.
You're mean.
Your
You're
national
just
championship quarterback.
out.
No,
Leave
it's legit. Your guy.
Oh,
you bleed scarlet and gray.
That's right. Look at right here. This is his hat. It's all about the Buckeyes right there. But that's mean, Jake. Elliot's there.
It's not my quote. It's his favorite quarterback.
But it was uncalled for. It was out of nowhere. Elliot's sitting there minding his own business, just having a good Friday, ready to head into the weekend and enjoy himself. And then you just kick him in the man parts with the Will Howard quote.
I think Alabama's getting Des Claude today, too, which is going to be sick.
All right, dudes, we're out of time. We'll do it again next week.